My family left me alone on Christmas dinner and used my money to go on a family cruise. I sold all the family assets when they came back. They had nowhere to live. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The scent of cinnamon and apple pie filled my kitchen as I carefully placed the last of the hand-painted name cards around my dining table. 70 years old, and I still took pride in these little touches. I smoothed down the embroidered tablecloth, my mother's now mine, and adjusted the centerpiece of pine branches and red candles. Perfect, I whispered to myself, stepping back to admire my work. The table was set for 12. My 3 children with their spouses, 5 grandchildren, and me. Christmas dinner, the way it had always been since Frank passed away 25 years ago. I glanced at the clock, 2:30 p.m. They'd be arriving at 4. Just enough time to shower and change into the dark green dress I'd bought specially for tonight. As I turned to head upstairs, my phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Robert, my eldest. My heart warmed, probably calling to ask if he should bring extra wine or to check if little Emma could have the bedroom with the rocking chair she loved so much. "Hello, sweetheart," I answered, my voice light with anticipation. "Hey, Mom." Something in his tone made me pause. "Listen, there's been a change of plans." My hand tightened around the phone. "Change of plans? What do you mean?" "We're not coming for Christmas dinner," he said, his words rushing together. "Actually, none of us are. We decided to do something different this year." I lowered myself onto a kitchen chair, suddenly needing to sit. "Different? I don't understand." Robert cleared his throat. "We're on a cruise. All of us, me and Patricia, Lisa and David, Michael and Jennifer, all the kids too." "A cruise?" I repeated, the words not making sense. "But it's Christmas Eve. I've been cooking since yesterday morning." "Yeah, it was kind of last minute," he said, and I could hear the forced casualness in his voice. "Lisa found this amazing deal for a family cruise, 15 days in the Caribbean. We couldn't pass it up." The phone felt heavy in my hand. Why didn't anyone tell me? I could have come, too. A pause. "Well, Mom, you know how you get seasick. And there wasn't enough room anyway. It was exactly enough cabins for our immediate families." Immediate families. The words stung more than they should have. "When did you all leave?" I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. "This morning." "We're already at sea." I heard laughter in the background, the clink of glasses. "Listen, Mom, I've got to go. They're doing this welcome thing on the main deck. Merry Christmas, okay? We'll call you when we get back." The line went dead before I could respond. I sat at my empty kitchen table, the phone still clutched in my hand, surrounded by the smells of a feast no one would eat. Slowly, I rose and walked to my purse, fishing out my reading glasses and bank card. With trembling fingers, I logged into my online banking app, and there it was. A withdrawal of $12,180 from my savings account 3 days ago. The description read, "Royal Caribbean Cruises." My legs gave out, and I sank back onto the chair. They had used my money, my savings, without asking, to take a family vacation without me. Outside, snow began to fall, delicate flakes gathering on the windowsill. I watched them, feeling numb. The turkey in the oven would be done in an hour. The sweet potatoes were ready to be reheated. The pies, apple, and pumpkin cooled on the counter. My gaze drifted to the Christmas tree in the living room, twinkling with lights and laden with ornaments collected over decades. Beneath it sat carefully wrapped presents, one for each child, each grandchild, each in-law. Selected with thought, wrapped with care. I rose on unsteady legs and walked to the dining room again. 12 place settings, 12 chairs, 12 name cards. I picked up Robert's, then Lisa's, then Michael's. then each of their spouses and children. One by one, I collected the name cards, stacking them neatly. Then I gathered the extra plates, the unused silverware, the empty glasses. I reduced the table to a single place setting. Just one. Mine. As darkness fell outside, I sat at the head of my table, Christmas lights reflecting in the window behind me. I could see my reflection. An old woman, alone on Christmas Eve, a feast prepared for loved ones who chose not to come. I thought about calling someone, a neighbor perhaps, or my sister in Ohio. But pride kept my hands still. I couldn't bear to explain. Instead, I served myself a plate of food I no longer had an appetite for and poured a glass of the expensive wine I'd bought for the occasion. I raised my glass to the empty chairs. "Merry Christmas to me," I whispered, my voice echoing in the silence of my house. As I took a bite of turkey that tasted like cardboard in my mouth, I made myself a promise. This would be the last Christmas I spent being taken for granted. The last time my children would see my love as something to be used and discarded at their convenience. They had no idea what awaited them when they returned from their cruise. No idea at all. That night, after clearing away most of the uneaten food and wrapping leftovers that would feed me for weeks, I found myself unable to sleep. My bedroom felt cavernous, filled with echoes of a family that had chosen to abandon me on Christmas. I got up and made my way to the attic, pulling down the old cedar chest that held the remnants of my life. Inside were photo albums, letters, and mementos, physical proof of a lifetime of sacrifices made for children who couldn't spare me a single holiday. The first album I opened showed Frank and me, young and radiant on our wedding day. He was so handsome in his Navy uniform, his smile wide and sincere. We had been married just 6 years when the heart attack took him at 34, leaving me a widow with 3 small children: Robert, 5, Lisa, 3, and Michael, just 18 months old. I traced Frank's face with my fingertip, remembering how terrified I'd been. It was 1979, and suddenly I was alone with 3 children and a mortgage. Frank's life insurance had paid off most of the house, thank God, but it wasn't enough to support us long term. The next album showed the children growing up: Robert's first day of school, Lisa's ballet recital, Michael's baseball games. What the smiling photos didn't reveal was how I'd worked 2 jobs for 15 years to keep this roof over their heads. Secretarial work during the day, waitressing 4 nights a week. My sister Nancy would watch the kids on those evenings, and I'd come home long after they were asleep, my feet swollen, my back aching. I flipped through pages of holidays past, Christmases where I'd managed to get each child exactly what they wanted, though it meant I went without new clothes or proper winter boots. Birthdays where I'd stayed up all night making elaborate cakes because I couldn't afford to buy them from the bakery. One photo made me pause: Robert's high school graduation. He was beaming in his cap and gown, holding the keys to the used car I'd scraped and saved to buy him. What the picture didn't show was that I'd taken on extra shifts for 6 months to afford it, or that I'd continued driving my own car until it literally died on the highway 2 years later. I found Lisa's college acceptance letter tucked into another album. She'd gotten into NYU, her dream school, with a partial scholarship. The remaining tuition had nearly broken me financially, but I'd never let her know that. I remortgaged the house, silently, stoically. When she graduated and landed her first job at a publishing house in Manhattan, her success felt like mine too. Then came Michael's rebellious years. The calls from school, the minor scrapes with the law, the string of jobs he couldn't seem to keep. I found the receipt for the lawyer I'd hired when he'd been caught with marijuana at 19, $3,000 I didn't have, put on a credit card I spent years paying off. Behind the albums were the property deeds, the main house, purchased with Frank, and then refinanced twice to put the kids through college. The small lake cottage we'd bought the year before Frank died, which I'd almost sold during the lean years, but somehow managed to keep. and the vacant lot Frank had inherited from his father, which I'd held on to because he'd always talked about building a family vacation home there someday. All 3 properties were solely in my name now. Frank had made sure of that before he passed, wanting to protect me and the children. I closed the chest and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered yard where my children had once built snowmen and had snowball fights. The yard I still paid to have mowed and maintained, though I could barely bend a garden anymore. My whole life had been devoted to giving them stability, opportunities, a foundation from which to build their own lives. I'd gone without, worked, until I was exhausted, put my own dreams aside, all so they could have what Frank and I had planned to give them together. And how had they repaid me? By stealing my savings for a cruise they didn't even invite me on. I wiped away angry tears as dawn broke over the horizon. The pain was crystallizing into something harder, something colder. I'd raised them better than this. I'd taught them about respect, about family, about gratitude. Or I thought I had. As the first rays of sun illuminated my bedroom, casting long shadows across the floor, I made my way back downstairs. The Christmas tree lights still twinkled, now seeming to mock me with their cheerfulness. I unplugged them with a sharp tug, plunging the room into the cold blue light of morning. Then I walked to my office, a small room off the kitchen that had once been a pantry. Inside was a worn desk, my old computer, and a file cabinet containing important papers. I pulled out my address book and flipped to the L section. Lawrence Winters, my late husband's, college roommate and a real estate attorney. We'd kept in loose contact over the years, Christmas cards, occasional phone calls. It was time to make one of those calls, because if my children thought they could discard me like this, they were about to learn a very expensive lesson about the value of family. Edna, it's been too long. Lawrence's voice came through the phone, warm and familiar despite the years. How are you holding up? I hesitated, unsure how to answer. How was I supposed to tell my deceased husband's old friend that I'd spent Christmas alone while my children gallivanted on a cruise paid for with my stolen money? I've been better, Lawrence, I finally said, my voice steadier than I expected. I need some legal advice about my properties. There was a pause on the line. Of course. Would you like to come into the office? I can fit you in tomorrow. The next morning, I dressed with care. A navy pantsuit I'd bought years ago for Lisa's college graduation, a string of pearls Frank had given me on our 5th anniversary. I needed to feel put together, dignified, even as my heart was crumbling inside. Lawrence's office was in a renovated Victorian downtown, all polished wood and gleaming brass. He greeted me with a hug, his face lined with more wrinkles than I. Remembered, his hair now completely silver. You look well, Edna, he said, guiding me to a comfortable chair across from his desk. I managed a small smile. You're too kind, Lawrence. We both know I look every day of my 70 years. He chuckled, then his expression sobered. Now, tell me what's going on. You sounded troubled on the phone. The whole story poured out of me. The Christmas dinner, preparations, the call from Robert, discovering the money taken from my account, the cruise they'd never invited me on. With each word, my voice grew stronger, the hurt transforming into resolve. I see, Lawrence said when I finished, steepling his fingers. And you're certain they used your money without permission? Positive. I never gave Robert access to withdraw. That much. He must have gotten my bank information somehow. Lawrence nodded slowly. That's elder financial abuse, Edna. We could pursue legal action. I shook my head. No, I don't want to go that route. Not yet, anyway. I took a deep breath. What I want to know is this. The house, the lake cottage, the empty lot. They're all still in my name alone, correct? Yes, he confirmed, pulling out a file. After Frank passed, everything transferred to you. You've never added any of the children to the deeds. despite my suggesting it for estate planning purposes. "Thank God for my stubbornness," I murmured. "Tell me, Lawrence, legally, what can I do with these properties?" "They're yours, Edna. You can do whatever you want with them. Sell them, rent them, gift them." He peered at me over his reading glasses. "What exactly are you thinking?" I sat up straighter. "I want to sell all of them, quickly before my family returns from their cruise." Lawrence's eyebrows shot up. "All of them? Even the main house?" "Especially the main house," I said firmly. "Edna," he said gently, "this is a major decision. One often made in the heat of emotion. Perhaps you should—" I cut him off. "Lawrence, I spent 45 years in that house, raised my children there. Every corner holds a memory. But do you know what my children see when they look at it?" I didn't wait for his answer. "Dollar signs. They see their inheritance, property, values. What they can get from me when I'm gone." I leaned forward. "I found something when I was looking for the property deeds. A brochure for Sunny Pines Assisted Living with notes in Robert's handwriting about convincing Mom it's time. They were planning to put me in a home, Lawrence. After the holidays. After returning from their cruise." Lawrence's face darkened. "I see." "No, you don't," I said, my voice breaking slightly. "My children, whom I sacrificed everything for, were planning to take my home, my independence, and my dignity. They were just waiting for the right moment." I composed myself, straightening my spine. I refuse to be a burden they need to deal with. I refuse to be an inconvenience they plan around. And most of all, I refuse to leave them a windfall they clearly don't deserve. Lawrence studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, Edna. If you're certain this is what you want, I'll help you. The market is strong right now. We can likely sell all 3 properties quickly, especially if we price them competitively." "Good," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "I want to be in my own place, something small, manageable that I choose for myself, before they return." "That's a tight timeline, but doable." He pulled out a legal pad. "And what about their belongings in the house?" I hadn't considered that. The children still had rooms filled with their things, boxes of memorabilia I'd kept for them, furniture they'd claimed but left with me because they didn't have room in their own homes. "Put it all in storage," I decided. "I'll pay for 3 months. After that, it's their responsibility." Lawrence made notes, then looked up at me. "Where will you go, Edna? Have you thought about that?" For the first time since making this decision, I felt a flutter of excitement. "There's a small condominium complex near the park. I've always admired it when I go for my walks. The units have balconies overlooking the duck pond." "Park view condominiums? Those are lovely," Lawrence agreed. "And certainly within your budget, especially after these sales." As we worked through the details, I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders. For decades, I'd carried the burden of that. House, the maintenance, the property taxes, the memories both sweet and painful. I'd stayed because I thought that's what my family needed. A home base, a gathering place, a legacy. But they'd shown me exactly how much they valued that legacy when they abandoned me at Christmas and stole my money. By the time I left Lawrence's office, we had a plan in place. He would contact real estate agents that afternoon. The properties would be listed by the end of the week. With any luck, I would be in my new home before my children's ship docked. As I drove home, past the familiar streets where I'd raised my family, I felt something I hadn't expected. Freedom. For the first time in decades, I was making a decision purely for myself, not calculating how it would affect my children, not sacrificing my needs for theirs. It felt terrifying. It felt exhilarating. It felt right. The next 2 weeks passed in, a whirlwind of activity that left me little time to dwell on my children's betrayal. Lawrence had been true to his word, connecting me with Mary Ellison, a real estate agent specializing in quick sales. "These properties are gems, Mrs. Warren. Mary said during our first meeting, her eyes gleaming as she toured my home. The market is hot right now and inventory is low. If we price them right, they'll move fast. And move they did. The lake cottage sold first, just 3 days after listing, to a young couple eager for a weekend retreat. They paid cash, allowing us to close quickly. The vacant lot went next, purchased by a developer who'd been eyeing that area for years. The sale of those 2 properties alone provided enough for my new condo and a comfortable financial cushion. The main house, my home for 45 years, took slightly longer, but by the end of the second week, we had multiple offers. I accepted, one from a family with 3 young children. The mother had tears in her eyes when she walked through the backyard. "I can just see our kids playing here," she said, smiling at me. "This is a home where memories are made." I nodded, remembering, pushing my own children on the swing set that used to stand under the oak tree. "Yes, it is." While the sales moved forward, I found my perfect new home, a 2-bedroom condominium on the 2nd floor of Parkview, with a balcony overlooking the duck pond just as I'd imagined. The building had an elevator, a small fitness room, and a community space where residents gathered for coffee each morning. At my age, the idea of neighbors close by was comforting rather than intrusive. The condo itself needed updating. The kitchen was straight out of the 1990s, and the carpet had seen better days. But it was mine. Not a repository of family history or expectations, but a fresh start. With each day that passed, my resolve strengthened. There were moments of doubt, of course. Times when I'd find myself standing in Robert's old bedroom, running my fingers over the height marks on the doorframe, or sitting on the window seat in Lisa's room where we'd read stories together. And my heart would ache with memories. But then I'd remember Christmas Eve, the silent house, the uneaten food, the phone call that changed everything, and the doubt would vanish, replaced by a steely determination. I hired a moving company to pack only what I wanted to take: my bedroom furniture, my favorite living room chair, family photos, carefully selected, Frank's desk, my kitchen essentials, and personal items I couldn't bear to part with. Everything else would go to the children's storage unit or be donated to charity. "Are you sure you want to leave the dining room set?" the moving foreman asked, eyeing the solid cherry table and chairs that had been the site of countless family meals. "It's a valuable piece." I looked at the table, remembering last Christmas Eve, 12 place settings reduced to 1. "I'm sure," I said firmly. "I won't need it where I'm going." As moving day approached, I worked through the house methodically, room by room, deciding what to keep, what to store for my children, and what to donate. It was like excavating the layers of my life, each object carrying its own weight of memory. In Robert's old desk, I found a shoebox full of birthday cards I'd given him over the years, each with a handwritten note inside. In Lisa's closet, there was the prom dress I'd sewn by hand when we couldn't afford the one she'd wanted from the department store. In Michael's room, I discovered the guitar I'd bought him for his 16th birthday, the one he'd played for, 3 months before abandoning it for a new interest. I placed these items in carefully labeled boxes, along with other mementos I thought they might want someday. The rest, furniture they'd left behind, childhood trophies, old school projects, went into the storage unit I'd rented for them. 2 days before my children were due to return from their cruise, I stood in my emptied house for the final time. The walls were bare, the rooms echoing with absence. Only the dining room remained intact, as the new owners had asked to purchase the table and chairs along with the house. I walked through each room slowly, saying goodbye to the space that had sheltered my family through decades of joy and sorrow. In the kitchen, I remembered teaching Lisa to bake cookies. In the living room, I saw Christmas mornings, birthday celebrations, movie nights. In the backyard, I pictured summer barbecues and winter snowball fights. This house had been more than walls and a roof. It had been the foundation of our family life. And now I was walking away from it. But as I locked the door for the last time and placed the key under the mat for the new owners, as arranged, I felt not grief, but a profound sense of rightness. This chapter of my life had ended. It was time to begin a new one. My new condo welcomed me with sunlight streaming through the large windows, illuminating possibilities rather than ghosts. I spent my first night there arranging and rearranging my belongings, making the space my own. I hung a few cherished photographs, Frank in his Navy uniform, the children when they were small and still adored me without complication, my parents, on their 50th anniversary, but left most of the walls bare, ready for new memories. That evening, I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine, watching ducks paddle across the pond as the setting sun turned the water to gold. For the first time in weeks, I allowed myself to imagine my children's reaction when they returned to find their childhood home sold, their inheritance liquidated, their mother gone. There would be shock, certainly. Anger, undoubtedly. Perhaps even accusations about my mental competence. I wasn't naive about how adult children sometimes handle aging parents who assert independence, but I was prepared. Lawrence had helped me update my will, removing my children as direct beneficiaries, and instead establishing trusts for my grandchildren's education. He'd also prepared a durable power of attorney naming my sister Nancy, not my children, as decision-maker should I become incapacitated. I had protected myself from their manipulation, while ensuring my grandchildren's futures. It was the best compromise I could make between the love I still felt for my family and the need to stand up for myself. Tomorrow, they would return. Tomorrow, they would learn what their betrayal had cost them. Tonight, though, I would sleep peacefully, in my new home, unburdened by a house too large, memories too heavy, and children who had taken me for granted one time too many. The call came at 9:17 a.m. I was having coffee on my balcony, watching an elderly man feed the ducks, when my phone lit up with Robert's name. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hello? I kept my voice neutral, as if this were any ordinary day. Mom? Robert sounded frantic. Where are you? What's going on? I took a slow sip of coffee. I'm at home. No, you're not. We just pulled up to the house, and there's another family moving. In! They said they bought it from you. So they'd gone straight to the house from the cruise. Of course they had. They needed to drop off their luggage, shower in their own bathrooms, sleep in their own beds. Not once had they called to check on me during their 15-day vacation. Not a single text asking if I was okay. Yes, I sold. The house, I said calmly. And the lake cottage. And your father's lot. Silence filled the line, followed by what sounded like Robert covering the phone to speak to someone else. I could hear raised voices in the background. Lisa's high-pitched tone, Michael's deeper one. Mom. Robert's voice returned, strained, with forced patience. What do you mean you sold the house? Where are you going to live? Where are we going to stay when we visit? Where's all our stuff? I've moved to Parkview condominiums. As for your belongings, I've put them in a storage unit. I've paid for 3 months. After that, it's your responsibility. I gave him the address and access code. The keys are with the manager. This is insane, Robert sputtered. You didn't even discuss this with us. Like you discussed. Taking $12,180 from my savings account for your cruise? I countered, my voice still even. Or like you discussed plans to put me in Sunny Pines assisted living after the holidays. Another stunned silence. How did you... He began, then stopped abruptly. Mom, that was just research. We were looking at options for the future, that's all. My future, I corrected him, which is now secure, in a home I chose, paid for with money from properties I owned. But those properties were our inheritance. Lisa's voice suddenly came through. Robert must have put me on speakerphone. You had no right to sell them without talking to us first. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. I had every right, Lisa. The deeds were in my name alone. An inheritance implies I'm dead, which, despite your apparent wishes, I am very much not. That's not fair, Mom, Michael chimed in. We never said we wanted you dead. No, you just wanted me out of the way in a retirement home while you divided up my assets, I replied. Much more considerate. You're blowing this way out of proportion, Robert said, his tone condescending. We were just starting to think about the future. Your future. You're not getting any younger, Mom. No, I'm not, I agreed. Which is why I decided to take control of my remaining years, rather than leave my fate in the hands of children who abandon me at Christmas and steal my money. We didn't steal, Lisa began. Robert took $12,180 from my account without my knowledge, or permission to pay for a family cruise I wasn't invited to join. I interrupted. What would you call it? No one answered. Mom, Robert finally said, his voice softer now, cajoling. You're upset, and I understand. But selling everything is an extreme reaction. Let's talk about this. Where are you? We'll come over and we can work this out. I could almost see him, the same expression he'd worn as a teenager when caught breaking curfew, the one that said, I know I messed up, but I'm counting on your love to let me off the hook. No, Robert. There's nothing to work out. The sales are final. You can't be serious, Lisa said, her voice cracking. What about all our memories in that house? What about Dad? How could you just sell it out from under us? The mention of Frank sent a pang through my heart, but I held firm. Your father would be appalled at how you've treated me. He worked so hard to provide for us, to make sure I'd be taken care of after he was gone. Do you think he'd approve of you using my money behind my back? Of planning to put me in a home so you could have my property? It wasn't like that, Michael protested weakly. It was exactly like that, I countered. And I've put a stop to it. Where are we supposed to go now? Lisa demanded, anger replacing her initial shock. We just got off a cruise ship. We need to shower, to sleep. I'm sure you can afford a hotel with whatever's left of my $12,180, I said dryly. Or perhaps you could stay with friends. That's what I would have done had I been included in your family vacation plans. This is ridiculous, Robert snapped, his placating tone evaporating. You're acting like a spiteful child, not a 70-year-old woman. Have you lost your mind? Actually, I've found it, I replied. For years, I've put your needs above my own. I've maintained a house too large for me, kept properties I didn't use because someday they'd be yours. I cooked your favorite meals. When you visited, kept your rooms ready as if you were still children who might come home any day. I bent my life around yours, and how did you repay me? By excluding me from your Christmas plans and helping yourselves to my savings. I took a deep breath. No more. My life is my own now. My money is my own. My home is my own. You'll regret this, Lisa said, her voice cold. When you're old and lonely and need help, you'll regret pushing us away. Her words stung, but I refused to show it. I was old and lonely this Christmas, Lisa. The difference is now I'm choosing it on my terms, not having it forced upon me by my children's neglect. Fine, Robert's voice returned, hard with anger. If this is how you want it, fine. But don't come crying to us when you realize what a mistake you've made. I won't, I promised, and ended the call. I sat there for a long time after, watching the ducks on the pond, my coffee growing cold. The confrontation had gone much as I'd expected. Shock, anger, accusations, attempts to make me feel guilty. But what surprised me was how little their words had hurt. The pain I'd felt on Christmas Eve had been like a raw, open wound. This was more like pressing on a bruise that had already begun to heal. It ached, but dully, distantly. My phone buzzed again. A text from Patricia, Robert's wife. How could you do this to your own family? The kids are devastated they won't have Grandma's house to visit anymore. I hope you're happy with yourself. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned off my phone, set it on the table, and leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes against the morning sun. For the first time in a very long time, I was answerable to no one. The sensation was both terrifying and exhilarating. As I sat there, I heard a soft knock on my condo door. For a moment, I tensed, wondering if my children had somehow tracked me down already. But when I opened the door, I found an elderly woman standing there, holding a small potted plant. "Hello there," she said with a warm smile. "I'm Margaret from Unit 4C. I saw you moving in yesterday and wanted to welcome you to Parkview." I stared at her for a moment, then smiled back, accepting the plant. "I'm Edna. Thank you for the welcome. Would you like to come in for coffee?" As Margaret stepped into my new home, I felt something unexpected. The first fragile tendril of a new beginning. 6 months had passed since the day I answered that fateful phone call from my children. 6 months of change, of growth, of learning who Edna Warren was beyond being a mother, a widow, a keeper of an empty family home. Spring had turned to summer, and my balcony garden flourished with herbs and flowers. I'd repainted the condo in colors I'd always loved, but Frank had found too bold. A soft sage in the living room, a warm terracotta in the kitchen. I'd replaced the dated carpet with hardwood floors, easier on my aging knees and much more elegant. More importantly, I'd built a new life. Every morning I joined the coffee group in the community room, where I'd found friends in Margaret who'd first welcomed me, and in Arthur, a retired English professor who shared my love of mystery novels. 3 times a week, I attended water, aerobics at the community center. On Tuesdays, I volunteered at the library, reading to children during story hour. I was busier, more engaged, more myself than I had been in decades. My relationship with my children remained fractured. After our initial confrontation, weeks had passed with no contact. Then came cautious formal text messages, Robert letting me know they'd emptied the storage unit, Lisa asking for her grandmother's recipe box, Michael inquiring about some old sports memorabilia he couldn't find. I responded to these practical queries but maintained my distance emotionally. The wound was still too fresh, the betrayal too profound. They made attempts at reconciliation, of course. Mother's Day brought cards with carefully neutral messages. My birthday in June prompted stiff phone calls, but none of them apologized for what they'd done, and I refused to pretend it hadn't happened. My grandchildren were a different matter. Emma, Robert's 12-year-old daughter, had been the first to reach out, sending me a hand-drawn card with a message that broke my heart. "I miss you, Grandma. It's not the same without your house to visit." I'd called her immediately, assuring her that while the house was gone, I was very much still here. We arranged for her to visit my new home, and Robert reluctantly dropped her off one Saturday afternoon. "This is so cool, Grandma," she exclaimed, exploring my condo with unfeigned enthusiasm. "You can see the ducks from your balcony." That visit opened a door. Soon, my other grandchildren began coming by, sometimes with their parents waiting awkwardly, in the car, sometimes dropped off for a few hours. I took them to the park, taught them to bake in my new kitchen, helped with homework at my smaller but still welcoming dining table. Through them, I maintained a connection to my family, even as I established clear boundaries with my children. Today was special, though. Today marked exactly 6 months since I'd moved into Parkview, and I'd invited all 3 of my children, and only my children, for dinner. No spouses, no grandchildren, just us. As I prepared a simple meal of roast chicken and vegetables, I felt a strange calmness. This wasn't about reconciliation or forgiveness, not yet. This was about clarity, saying things that needed to be said, without anger or haste. They arrived together, a united front. Robert, still handsome at 46, his hair beginning to gray at the temples. Lisa, elegant at 44, wearing a dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Michael, boyish at 42, fidgeting with his car keys as if planning a quick escape. "Come in," I said, stepping aside to let them enter my home. My new home, which none of them had yet visited. "Thank you for coming," they murmured polite greetings, their eyes darting around, taking in the transformed space. Gone were the familiar antiques and heirlooms that had filled our family home. In their place were new pieces I'd chosen just for me. A comfortable sectional sofa, perfect for my shorter stature, artwork that spoke to my taste, not Frank's, a sleek television mounted on the wall where I watched my favorite shows without apology. "It's nice," Lisa offered, sounding surprised. "Very modern." "Thank you," I replied, gesturing toward the dining area. "Please sit down. Dinner's ready." We settled around my table, small enough that we couldn't avoid looking at each other, but large enough that no one felt crowded. I'd set it with my new dishes, not the china we'd used for family meals for decades. After serving the food, I took my seat and looked at my 3 children, these adults who had come from my body, whom I had raised with love and sacrifice, who had wounded me so deeply. "Before we eat, I want to say something," I began, my voice steady. "6 months ago, I made a decision that shocked all of you. I sold properties you expected to inherit. I moved without consulting you. I established a life separate from the one you'd envisioned for me." Robert started to speak, but I held up my hand. "Please let me finish. This isn't about blame anymore. It's about understanding." I looked each of them in the eye. "For 45 years after your father died, I defined myself as your mother. Everything I did, working multiple jobs, maintaining the house, setting aside my own dreams, I did for you. And I don't regret that sacrifice. It was my choice, made from love." I paused, took a sip of water. "But somewhere along the way, that sacrifice became expected rather than appreciated. I became a convenience in your lives, a free babysitter, a holiday host, a keeper of your childhood rooms, not a person with my own needs and feelings." "Mom, that's not fair," Lisa protested. "We've always appreciated you." "Have you?" I asked quietly. "Was it appreciation that led you to take my money without asking? To plan my institutionalization without my input? To leave me alone on Christmas Eve after I'd spent days preparing a dinner for all of you?" None of them could hold my gaze. "I'm not saying this to hurt you," I continued, my voice softening. "I'm saying it because at 70, I've finally learned that being honest is more important than being nice. I've learned that loving you doesn't mean letting you treat me as an afterthought." "We never meant to hurt you," Michael said, his voice small. "We just didn't think." "That's exactly right," I agreed. "You didn't think. About me, about my feelings, about the example you were setting for your own children about how to treat their parents when they age." I took a deep breath. "But I've had 6 months to think, to reflect, to decide what kind of relationship I want with you going forward. And I've decided that I would like us to try again. Not as mother and children, but as adults who respect each other." Robert looked up, surprise in his eyes. "You want to reconcile?" "I want to build something new," I clarified. "The old relationship wasn't working. It led us here to this broken place. But perhaps we can create something healthier, with clear boundaries and mutual respect." "What does that mean, exactly?" Lisa asked cautiously. "It means I am my own person, with my own life," I explained. "I won't be available at your convenience. I won't tolerate being taken for granted. I won't give you access to my finances or allow you to make decisions about my future without my full participation." I served myself some chicken before continuing. "It also means I'd like to know my grandchildren better. I'd like to be invited to family gatherings, not as the host, but as a guest who is wanted and welcomed. And someday, when I truly do need help, I'd like to be able to ask for it without fear of being steamrolled." Silence fell around the table as they absorbed my words. Then, surprisingly, Robert spoke up. "I'm sorry, Mom. he said, his voice rough with emotion. You're right. About all of it. We treated you like an extension of ourselves, not like a person. And what we did at Christmas was unforgivable. It wasn't your finest moment, I acknowledged, allowing a small smile. But it's not unforgivable. It's just unforgettable. As we began to eat, the conversation tentatively shifted to safer topics, the grandchildren's activities, local news, my new friends at Parkview. The tension didn't disappear entirely, but it eased. By dessert, a simple apple crisp made from my mother's recipe, we were talking almost normally. When they left that evening, Lisa hugged me, whispering, I like your new place, Mom. It suits you. Thank you, I replied. That's because I chose it for me, not for anyone else. After they'd gone, I sat on my balcony in the summer twilight, watching fireflies dance over the pond. The evening hadn't magically healed all wounds or erased the past. There would still be difficult moments ahead, old patterns to break, new boundaries to maintain. But for the first time in a very long time, I felt at peace with my decision. I had reclaimed not just my financial independence, but something far more precious, my sense of self-worth, my right to be treated with dignity, my voice. The house was gone, yes. But I, Edna Warren, 70 years old, and finally, truly herself, I remained. Stronger, wiser, and free. Now I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here.